समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
In our episode 1648, we had listed the 9 standoffs that India has had with Pakistan in the past 50 years. Past 50 years, we count because generally the period after the Shimla Accord. We saw a period of peace after the Shimla Accord of nearly 15 years, and then action began. So those 9 I had listed. What we are going to do today, as India is still weighing its options and watching for signals from Pakistan, you know that there are civil defense drills going on. India has kept very calm. We see, on the other hand, a lot of belligerent statements coming in from the Pakistan side. Lots of military movement and mobilization. So India is weighing its options calmly. And that gives us the time to assess these 9 standoffs and draw some interesting conclusions. So be warned, this episode carries a fair dollop of opinion, but this is analysis-based opinion. This is not what I wish should happen. So not opinion in the sense that I am recommending what should happen, but opinion based on my analysis of the situation. And before we delve deeper into what is a very complex issue today, also my reminder that the admissions to the 4th batch of the Print School of Journalism are closing very soon. So please do apply. It is a wonderful opportunity. Over 16 weekends across 4 months, you get the finest journalism education from people who actually are in the profession. People like us. I'm also included there. Plus all our editors, experts, and we also get outside experts who teach you. You don't have to go to a journalism school and spend 2 years, 3 years, 4 years there and spend loads and loads of money. You can learn from practitioners and also come and intern in our newsroom and work. So many from the first 2 batches have already been working. Some have joined our staff also. The 3rd batch is finishing up now. And once again, admissions to the 4th batch are closing very soon. And we have a very small number of seats left now. So please do apply right now. See these 9 standoffs. Just to revise this in our minds, what are these 9s? 1987, exercise brass tacks. I said the other day that is the only one that India orchestrated. 1987, exercise brass tacks. The second was in 1990. That is when trouble in Kashmir had just erupted, Kashmir Valley, and peaked. And that's when Kashmiri Pandits were driven out after massacres, rape, torture, arson, all kinds of bad things were done to them. That is the time when India also had a weak government. 1990, that's when VP Singh was the Prime Minister. Then 1999, that all of us are more familiar with, that was Kargil. 2001 was a near thing, that was the attack on Parliament. 2008, after that was 26/11, again we are familiar with this. Then 2016 and 2016, there were 2 in 2016. One, the attack in Pathankot, and the second, Uri. Now, why do I list Pathankot and Uri also in these standoff-like situations? I will explain to you as we go along. And then there is 2025. In fact, I may read 2025 in conjunction with 2024, because in 2024 also an incident had taken place. That was the attack in Riyasi on a bus carrying Vaishno Devi pilgrims, of whom 9 were killed. The bus fell in the khud and the rest fortunately survived. So I read that in conjunction with what's happened with Pahalgam now, and I treat that as one standoff. I will explain to you why I do so as we go along, analyzing the essential difference between these standoffs. So go back to 1987, resolved between Ziaul Haq and Rajiv Gandhi. 1991, resolved ultimately. There was a change of army chief in Pakistan between Mirza Aslam Beg and Asif Nawaz, who was a professional soldier. Also, that moment had passed. The moment had passed because Pakistan then saw India's resolve. And I don't think Pakistan at that moment wanted to orchestrate a war really. They wanted to use a threat and the threat of use of nuclear weapons early in a war to see how much nerve that government of India had, that coalition government of India had. But that coalition government of India also mobilized fully, and the Pakistanis were dissuaded. In any case, in the Pakistani military leadership, there was nobody then spoiling for a fight. That is the reason those two were resolved. 1999, again, Musharraf was the chief. Again, it was resolved between Vajpayee and Nawaz Sharif, and we know what happened behind the scenes. Clinton got involved. Now we come to 2001. 2001 attack on Parliament. Now it was a failed attack. It was an attack on Parliament while Parliament was in session. What if? What if? It's a big what if. What if the attack had succeeded? What if these people had entered Parliament? What if these people, God forbid, had been able to harm, kill, forget killing, even injure a bunch of Indian parliamentarians? That would have most certainly created a war. That is the reason I say that these standoffs are fundamentally different. So first three standoffs came straight from the establishments in the two countries, 87 from India, 1991 and 1999 from Pakistan. And that's why when Kargil looked like it was going out of Pakistan's control, things were going out of Pakistan's control, the purpose of Kargil was limited on the Pakistani side. That was to create leverage with India, to drag India to talks over Kashmir. Once that leverage was lost, the military commander of that point was willing to let it go. And that's how Kargil was resolved. He wasn't willing to go into a full-fledged war. Just like 1991, his predecessor wasn't, and 1987, neither India nor Pakistan was. 2001, the situation shifted fundamentally because now policy had been taken over. Policy had been taken over by what came to be described as non-state actors. The 2001 Parliament was a Jaish-e-Mohammed attack. What does Jaish-e-Mohammed want? What does Lashkar-e-Taiba want? There is nothing they want more dearly than an India-Pakistan war. Because what that does is, that brings Islamist forces to the fore in Pakistan. And these are also people who read their own scriptures or their own version of the scriptures, and they believe it's written somewhere there that there'll be a Ghazwa-e-Hind and they will come and restore the Muslim rule over the subcontinent. They are delusional people. That's why they are terrorists. Their first big move, therefore, was Parliament attack, when they thought that if they killed a bunch of Indian MPs, nothing can stop a war between India and Pakistan. We came very close to that. There was Parakram. However, in the course of time, Vajpayee and Musharraf got together. Musharraf was also a professional soldier. I've said any number of times that he was delusional. He didn't have much intellect. In fact, he was quite stupid in many areas. But he was not a fundamentalist. He was still a professional soldier at the end of the day with a commando mindset. So 2001, the first time when the non-state actors almost brought the two countries to war. 2008, once again the same movie plays out in Mumbai. Suppose in place of 166, they'd been able to kill 300 people, 500 people. There were so many people there. Suppose Kasab had not got caught alive. Suppose the Pakistani establishment then spread the word that that's a false flag operation. It would have angered India to such an extent that a retaliation would have become absolutely inevitable. So whoever was doing this in Mumbai was also looking to take India and Pakistan to a full-fledged conflict. Because in a full-fledged conflict, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, who I describe often enough as regiments of Pakistani Special Forces, Pakistani Army Special Forces regiments in Mufti, right? They then get legitimacy in a situation like that. And they again think that there is inevitability to an India-Pakistan war, at the end of which they believe that it's written that they are going to win. That's why they want to orchestrate a war. 2001 the first time, 2008 the second time. Now, what is it that went wrong for them each time? What went wrong for them each time, or what was missing each time? in 2001 as well as 2008 that with all his flaws, the incumbent chief was still a reasonably professional soldier and not an Islamist. 2001 it was Musharraf, 2008 it was General Ashfaq Parvez Kayani, also former ISI chief, not a nice guy, one with a very twisted mind, as the Pakistanis themselves acknowledge, but not an Islamist who believed in the inevitability or destiny theory. And that is how India and Pakistan were able to bring the temperatures down. Pakistan offered to send its ISI chief to India. That didn't happen, but Pakistani NSA made a public pronouncement that these were our people, we should accept that. Kasab is our person, we should accept that. He lost his job, but all of that helped calm things down, all of that with international pressure. That brings us to 2016. And I said I count two incidents there. 2016, January in Pathankot Air Base. 2016 in Uri, brigade headquarters. Each one of these incidents, each one of these attacks, these were attributed to Jaish-e-Mohammed. Each one of these attacks, if it had been successful, right? You might say that 17 soldiers were killed. How do you call it not successful? I will explain. If either of these had been quote unquote successful in terms of what Jaish-e-Mohammed was aiming, it could have orchestrated a war. Suppose in Pathankot they were Indian aircraft, because they were able to infiltrate in the air base. Suppose there were 10 Indian aircraft. Suppose they were Indian air crews, families, who knows who was there, and they were able to play havoc there. Just the pictures of those burning aircraft would have most certainly created a war between India and Pakistan. Fortunately, and that's also thanks to the courage of the people who first confronted these infiltrators, these terrorists, the first responders, thanks to their courage, such a thing did not happen. Then we come to Uri. It was a brigade headquarters. Bad enough that 17 soldiers were killed, but this could be 100 soldiers, this could be officers, this could have been much worse, because these people had found entrance in a highly guarded brigade headquarters. So once again, it had the potential of starting a war. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that the standoffs that we had before 2001, those happened because Pakistani army had directly started something. 87 Indian army had started just an exercise. There was no design to invade Pakistan, but Pakistanis got spooked and misunderstood it. 91, 99 was something that Pakistani army and the Pakistani government started, and they were able to pull back. 2008 and the two incidents, 2001, 2008 and 2016, the two incidents, Pathankot and Uri, these were all orchestrated by non-state actors in Pakistan that work in close conjunction with the ISI and the Pakistani military establishment. And they are the ones who ideologically want a war with India. For them, there is no settlement of this, settlement of that, negotiations. They never talk about that. They just want to drag the subcontinent into a war. And these are the same forces which have now carried out the Pahalgam massacre. See the nature of the Pahalgam massacre. Going to a place which has tourists from all over the country, separating men from women and children, then identify the Hindus among the men, then killing them in front of their women and children so they can go and tell the story to the whole country, all of India. This was meant to trigger a conflict, and they've almost taken the subcontinent to the verge of that. The reason I read this in conjunction with what happened in Riyasi to the bus last year is that if they had been fully successful in the bus, if the driver had not lost control and bus had not gone into a khud, not rolled over into a khud, and the rest of the passengers had not survived, suppose 30 bus passengers, Tirthayatris, pilgrims had been killed, the situation that we are seeing now, post Pahalgam, we could have seen last year, post Riyasi. Once again, these forces are out on the loose, trying to create a war between India and Pakistan. Now, how desperate were they to create a war between the two countries? You can see from the testimony of David Coleman Hadley and Tahavur Rana. Both say in their testimonies that even after 26/11 in Mumbai, after Pakistan's hand had been exposed, after Lashkar-e-Taiba's role had been exposed, even then they wanted to carry out more killings in Mumbai and in Delhi. David Coleman Hadley, in fact, came back to India, and he was also scoping the National Defence College in Delhi, also a conference of India's defence scientists. Any of those operations, if he had succeeded, he would have again taken India and Pakistan close to war. So that is a project on their part. What is the difference this time? There is a fundamental difference between today's situation and the ones that we saw in the past, and which the two countries were able to resolve and prevent war. And that is the worrying part now. Number one, in the past 50 years, this is the first standoff under an Islamist chief. Pakistan has not had an Islamist chief. I had explained to you earlier, Zia-ul Haq was devout. He was the son of a Maulvi, but he had modern education. He went to St. Stephen's College. He got Islamized as the Afghan war started, because he started thinking that God had positioned him in Pakistan precisely because there was a jihad expected in Afghanistan. But he was not a scholar of the Quran or anything. Then all the others after him were reasonably professional soldiers. They might have sabotaged their own elected governments. In some cases, they might have dismissed their own elected governments. In some cases, like Musharraf, they might have taken over power. In any case, fundamentally, all of them were professional soldiers. The current one, General Syed Asim Munir, is an Islamist. And you can see this from his speeches, from his utterances. You saw the famous speech or infamous speech that he delivered to overseas Pakistanis. Before that also, on the eve of the elections in Pakistan last year, he had called in a bunch of students and lectured them. That is where he had called social media vicious media, and he also said on social media, Pakistan suffers digital terrorism and there should be limitations to freedom of speech, etc. He's been speaking like that. In fact, even after the Pahalgam massacre, he spoke at the Pakistan Military Academy at Kakul, from where Pakistan's officers pass out. That's a long course, and I will tell you about Asim Munir and the long course in a minute. Addressing the cadets there, he also asked them to avoid the temptation of Western civilization. And he said, if we were to embrace Western civilization, why did we get rid of Hindu civilization, right? That's what he said. So this is a very Islamist, a truly Islamist general, and to that extent, he's fundamentally ideologically aligned with Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba much more than the other chiefs. Other chiefs might have seen them as useful instruments, right? I'm not buying the non-state business. That becomes an excuse. They were still linked with the state and the ISI, but the previous chiefs might have found them as useful instruments, use and throw, or use and put away in cold storage. This one, however, might be much more, or probably is ideologically much closer to them, the closest to them of all the chiefs that we've seen so far. Second, this is the weakest government in Pakistan, elected government, the weakest elected government ever since Zia. Even Benazir Bhutto's government in 1990 had some strength. It got dismissed, but it had some strength because it had more moral authority internationally, because democracy had just been restored in Pakistan after the death of Zia-ul Haq. This government, however, is an arrangement, because this government stole the election, or basically the army stole the election and gifted to them. That is the reason why Shahbaz Sharif is the Prime Minister, but Nawaz Sharif, whose party it is, has chosen to stay out of power. He's sitting at home. His daughter is, of course, Chief Minister of the state of Punjab. This is a very weak arrangement where the elected government really counts for nothing. How little it counts for, you've seen in the way the National Security Advisor has been appointed. Serving ISI chief, a lieutenant general, has been appointed National Security Advisor in the rank of a cabinet minister. That tells you that this is not even a hybrid government. This is a government run by Asim Munir, who's got a civilian government there to speak on his behalf. That's why the civilian ministers keep on giving interviews to foreign media, etc. Number three, and very important, that Asim Munir and the Pakistani armed forces probably think that they have carried out some critical modernization over the past 4 or 5 years. And this is the time to test it. India has begun to modernize now, and chances are that in a couple of years, the gap between them and India will increase so much that it will become impossible for them to carry out even these operations without the fear, without the apprehension of an inevitable retribution to which they will not find themselves capable of retaliating against. That's why they might think this is the time to do something. And part of this same sense of urgency is also the feeling that Kashmir is getting out of their hands. Now, all of these discussions, all of these negotiations, all the formulae these negotiations led to, including the Shimla Agreement, the spirit was that line of control will eventually become the international border between the two countries. So, jo tera hai wo tera hai, jo mera hai wo mera. That was the spirit of those negotiations. I'm not pulling this out of thin air. This is what's been documented in books by people on two sides. This is In Pursuit of Peace, India-Pakistan Relations under 6 Prime Ministers by Satinder Kumar Lamba, who was India's former ambassador to Pakistan, High Commissioner to Pakistan, but also Manmohan Singh's special envoy for negotiations. And also this is kind of counterpart from the Pakistani side, Khurshid Mahmood Kasuri, who was the foreign minister of Pakistan as well. So similar formulas have been described many times between Vajpayee Nawaz Sharif, Vajpayee Musharraf, and then Manmohan Singh Musharraf. These forces now worry Asim Munir and these fundamentalist forces, which are now much more closely aligned with his Pakistani army than in the era of his predecessor chiefs. All of them believe with the change in the status of Kashmir, even this negotiating position has now gone away from them. And as Kashmir is being more integrated, Kashmir is doing better economically, Kashmiris are doing better economically, level of violence has gone down, tourism is booming. All of that is seen as a threat. Threat in the sense that ab Kashmir haath se nikal gaya. Now we have no leverage left in Kashmir. That is the worry on that side. That is the reason this attack, and that is the reason this standoff is more serious probably than the ones we've seen in the past.